Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Today we're talking about SmartConnect and how we can utilize that to integrate your CSP billing with your financial system. Specifically today, we're going to be looking at Dynamics 365 Business Central, but anything that we discuss is going to apply to most of the financial systems you might be utilizing. So, quick introduction. My name is Chris Hansen, the SmartConnect product manager. So I get to work with our dev team, kind of oversee the product direction, work with sales, QA, marketing, kind of tying our whole team together to make sure that we deliver a solution that's beneficial for both you as the partners and for any of your customers that you might be using it. So today, I've got just a handful of slides. We're going to do a lot of hands-on demos showing data integrating. Again, the tagline is integrating your CSP billing with your financial system on here. But if you're familiar with SmartConnect, which I believe most of you are, I can recognize quite a few people on the call. SmartConnect does a lot more than just that one, end-to-end tied together between that billing and the financial system. So what we're going to walk through first, we'll do a quick overview of SmartConnect. So if anyone is on the call that isn't familiar with the product, kind of get an idea of what it does in general. Then we're going to look specifically at what we're talking about and what we're going to be demoing around your CSP billing, your Dynamics 365 system, your Business Central environment, anything else you might be using, and show how we can tie that data together as it's flowing back and forth between each of those systems. So for the general overview, again, if any of you have been on a SmartConnect demo before or been to one of our presentations, you probably recognize this little graphic. We've used it for quite a few years, but we still feel that it defines what SmartConnect does very well. So the idea is we can connect to anything up in that top grid, our data source section. We don't have every possible source listed there, but that should give you a pretty good idea of we can pull data from almost any source, any API, anything with a data driver sitting on it, pick that up, and then send it to our destination, that very bottom option on the graphic here. Now, where SmartConnect has the most benefit, the most functionality is those two boxes in the middle. One is your triggers, which is essentially telling SmartConnect how and when you want those integrations to run. Do you want this to be a user-driven process? Should this be automated either through change tracking and scheduling or a real-time plugin? And also, if you want to call into the SmartConnect API or web service we have to call those integrations on demand, tie it to, like, say, a website like we've done internally, you can do that as well. The third box, that transformation section, that's where we are able to look at the data and manipulate it, transform it as it's being passed from one point to another. So it means your systems don't have to have perfectly matching data. There's almost no two systems in the world that just sync up perfectly without changing that data in between the two stops. So this is where we get a lot of that benefit. You don't have to be able to develop your solution. You can use our interface, you can change it, you can maintain those integrations later on without needing that coding background or needing that developer background on there. We do allow you to do some scripting. We've got .NET scripting, we've got Java scripting within the product, but it's not a requirement. So the last thing I wanted to talk about SmartConnect just in general is kind of where our tool sits, because I do get a lot of questions on that still. We have two main deployment types of SmartConnect. We have an on-premise Windows client for SmartConnect for on-premise installations, and then we have a fully hosted online option called smartconnect.com. So depending on the scenario, whether your scenario internally or any customer scenario, you can choose between which version of SmartConnect is going to fit better for your environment. So if your Business Central is on-premise, or if you're using an earlier version of NAV or GP and you want to tie that to your CSP billing, we can do so. We'd probably just use our on-premise SmartConnect rather than the web version. So today I'm going to be walking through as if everything is online and hosted, but again, 99% of what I'm going to be going through is going to be supported in on-premise installations as well, just slightly different windows in terms of how it would look around the setup piece of it. So let's actually get into it. Let's talk about our CSP billing, integrating that to Business Central. And we've got this nice little hand-drawn graphic that kind of illustrates how I think most people view this process working. Very simplified view on here. And I want to point out early on that with that CSP billing, we're not looking to replace the different offerings that exist between, the Microsoft CSP portal and Dynamics 365, whether that's customer engagement or just the sales app on there. There's multiple different options that tie those together very well. One we've worked with frequently and that I've got on this graphic is Work 365, provided by IOTAP. We've done joint sessions with them before. If you're interested in knowing more about how that actually works, I definitely recommend searching out Ismail and his different demos he's got around it. But the idea is we don't have to replace that option. There's Work 365, there's 2 or 3 other options that we've worked with as well. And they tie those subscriptions together. They've got an add-in into Dynamics 365. They handle all that. They start generating different invoices and the amounts we need off of that. And that is where we step in, because as Work 365 or whatever tool you have are building those invoices from your CSP billing, they're still just sitting in Dynamics 365. And what we've found with almost all the partners we've talked to this point where we've implemented something is kind of that basic, CRM, Business Central, just add in default connector doesn't handle what they need in terms of when they want those invoices synced across. The other integration points around the supporting objects for the invoices, so like the master records, and that doesn't handle the bi-directional capabilities that you might need if you're feeding data back from Business Central or from your ERP back to customer engagement or back to sales or back to Work 365. So that's where SmartConnect is going to step in and be that tie between Business Central and then your Dynamics 365 sales or customer engagement. Now, I've left this nice simple graphic on the screen for a while, but that's generally not what it ends up looking like once you get into what's actually required or needed by the integration. It normally looks a little bit more like this. So when you talk about synchronizing your invoices and your billing to Business Central, you're not just doing that one part. You need all the supporting records along with it. So we need our customers, we need our vendors, we need our items. If you're doing your items, we need to have the price list, the unit of measures, actual pricing information as well to ensure that your prices match between what's coming across from your CSP portal, ending up in Dynamics 365, and what you want to see in Business Central at the end of the day. So this can get a lot more complex than just one integration point between the two. Just looking at the list, we're looking at at least 8 ongoing integrations between the different systems there. So that's what I'm going to show today. I've got a couple tenants spun up. I've got a Business Central. I've got a Dynamics 365 environment. I've got a few invoices that have been generated through the subscription billing through Work 365, and we're going to look at SmartConnect picking them up, the different options that we have in terms of when we want that data to flow. And then I'll dive into SmartConnect to show how that's all done on the back end. Let's go ahead and leave this demo and we'll jump right into my Work 365 invoices. I've narrowed it down. I guess I didn't need to refresh that entire page, but I've narrowed it down to my invoices that have come in, actually showing new and complete ones in here. Right now, all of these are for a specific customer. They're all for one solution that I've got active right now. So it's going to make it easy for us to look in Business Central and see the difference. 2 of these are brand new invoices. They just came in today and yesterday. Sitting there as the status new, we can see the different names on there. I'll open those up in a second, but I just wanted to point out this is sitting on one customer account. If I go over to Business Central, I've got that same customer account open right here, and let me just refresh this window. And I wanted to show that we don't currently have any ongoing sales invoices in here. We've got a handful of posted ones from previous runs through that we've done, but right now we've got 0 sales invoices attached to one solution. So let's go ahead and see if we can get SmartConnect to pick these up and send them across. Now I'll open up, let's just open up the first one here, the invoice for our Office 365 package. We've got a handful of products on here. I think it's just 2 that we've currently got in here. And what I wanted to illustrate here is I've got this little extra checkbox field added and called Send to ERP. So I'm going to switch that to yes. Go ahead and save this record to make sure Dynamics 365 saves it, and then kind of talk about what's happening when I change that. So this whole screen that we're looking at, this is all default Dynamics 365, its default invoice, even if it gets generated through the CSP billing or the subscriptions, it's still a standard invoice in Dynamics 365. The difference on here is I've added 2 custom fields in this scenario. And for a couple of reasons. One, it's a lot easier to show on the demo if I've got a checkbox that I'm actually switching to yes to say, all right, this is when the SmartConnect process should pick it up and trigger everything to run to my Business Central environment. And then secondly, we've actually designed it this way for at least one partner where they wanted an extra field in here to say, all right, I don't actually want them synced across until we're ready to go. Now, I want to point out we don't have to use this custom field. It's just how the integrations are configured for this particular environment. We can set up our SmartConnect integrations and those SmartConnect processes to trigger off any criteria that we want from our systems when we're picking it up. We have one partner that as soon as the invoice is created, so we look for the creation of the invoice, we make sure the status is active on there, and that is it for criteria. So as soon as it's in there, boom, we pick it up and send it over. Others, they've actually added a status reason called like ready for billing. So when they change their status on there, they've got a workflow process. When that gets updated, they go ahead and we have our SmartConnect process pick it up at that point. In our case, I've got it tied to the send to ERP option inside of here. I've also added an ERP transaction number just so it's going to be easy for us to match it up between the 2 systems after it creates that invoice in Business Central. I'm letting it default the Business Central invoice number. So I want that coming back in here as kind of my tie-in together. But I believe I'm taking either the invoice ID or the name and putting it in the reference field on the invoice. So we can match that up, ensure I'm not lying as we're going through this. But again, just want to point out we don't have to use custom fields. We could write back an ERP transaction number to any other available field on this entity, or we wouldn't have to write it back at all if you didn't want to have that bi-directional process where we'll send the data back to customer engagement or to sales when it wraps up. But I'll close that down. And you can actually see as I've closed that, I talked for way too long. During that process, it picked that up automatically, sent it over to Business Central. It generated an invoice, we'll match it up on that invoice number, and it came back and switched our status reason to build. So we can see that that is now in our Business Central environment. We went ahead and build that. Let's do the same thing on this record. I won't spend as much time talking. I'll switch that to yes. I'll save and close. So now what that's doing is on the back end, we've got SmartConnect picking it up. We've got our true real-time plugin sitting on there. So as soon as it meets our criteria, sees we've updated the record, it'll push that across. And then we'll just wait for the integration to run to send to Business Central. And then immediately after it sends to Business Central, it comes back with that corresponding integration to update our data inside of here as well. So these have both been sent across. We can see it ends in 831 and 832 for our invoices. Let's find that matching customer record and we'll refresh it on here. And now we can see we've got that matching number for our ongoing sales invoices as well. So if I open this up, should match on all the amounts for these invoices. So again, we got $120, $600, that's all correct on there. What I'll do, let's open up 831, 832. Like I mentioned, these are the ones we're working with here. And we should see in the reference field, I've pulled across the invoice name. So the 0365 Prem package 143, that was pulled directly off my name on there. And then we also took all the correct amounts, items, dates, etc., fed that across to our ERP system. Now, we normally have one more piece to this puzzle, and normally we wait for this invoice to be posted, paid, etc., everything is finalized, and normally our partners want us to go back and change that status one more time to mark it complete inside of CRM. So I'm going to simplify the process a little bit. I'm just going to post this. We're going to assume it's all paid, everything is good. So as we go ahead and we post that invoice out, after that post, we have one more SmartConnect process to go ahead and say, all right, that should go ahead and begin to send that back to CRM and change that final status one more time. So instead of having 2 sitting as billed, this one should remain as billed inside of CRM. The other one should be marked as complete when I refresh this, if it's already ran. And there we go. Posted the one. Status reason has been marked as complete. That's read only now. We can't change anymore. Kind of finishes that cycle between the 2 systems. So that's what I wanted to show for the actual demo and that data moving back and forth. I stayed with just the invoice piece of it, showing it, flowing back and forth between the two systems. But in order for this to be successful, we have all those other integration points that slide pointed out. We've got our customers synced, we've got the products synced, we've got all the pricing synced as well, and those bi-directional or one direction maps depending on what the record type is. So it's a combination of multiple ongoing processes to make this look, and feel as seamless as possible for the end user and for you, if you're the ones actually in the system. So what I want to do now is actually dive into SmartConnect, show you how the integrations are set up, at least this invoice integration, how I've tied a couple together, what the options are around that, so you can all see how easy it is to go ahead and set up that field mapping, make the changes if we want to, modify it, or if we add custom fields to CRM later on, to handle all of that. So as I mentioned earlier, since all my systems are online here, we're using smartconnect.com as our host, as our integration solution for this one. If I was doing more on-prem work, if it was Nav on-prem or other systems were on-prem, I might lean towards using our on-prem SmartConnect to accomplish it. But the end result is going to be the same between the two here. So what I want to do, actually, what I can do here is I can refresh this because this is our main dashboard. If it refreshes, I might have timed out here. Let's make sure I'm still logged in. Nope, I timed out because I talked for much too long between when I originally started the demo and had this spun up beforehand. So let me log back in. And what we'll get is just on the dashboard, you can see recent integration runs. So you can see as I was doing that demo, we were doing the real-time process, the Work 365 invoices to Business Central real-time. We had the trigger fire back to update that ERP transaction number as they're being created inside Business Central. And then finally, we also had that update invoice status one that changed that final process to complete. So those were all running automatically. We didn't have to do any manual intervention at all once we had it set up correctly. Now, if you're not familiar with SmartConnect, just brief overview, this is, like I said, our .com environment. Our data integrations are comprised of kind of three different parts. So you've got your connection, which is your different end systems you want to tie together. So if I take a look at our connection list here, we've got the needed connections to Business Central. We're connecting to the OData endpoints on there. We've got the needed connection to our customer engagement environment, which includes Work 365 or any other add-in that you tie in to tie your CSP to that 365 environment. And then I've got a few other connections in place because we use this for a lot of different demos that we need. So the main idea with the connection is this a system you want to pull or push data to? If it is, you want to have that set up as a connection point. After that, what we're looking at is the different type of data sources, how you want to pick up that data. So for the most part, our data is using different real-time triggers on here. So I've got a real-time trigger on the, should see it in here, there we go, on the invoice object inside of customer engagement. So any invoice created in there, whether it's built by hand or comes from Work 365 or anything else, we've got that set up to automatically fire off when it meets our criteria. And you can see we've got a linked integration to it saying, all right, send those invoices to Business Central real time. And inside that integration is where we actually do all the individual field mappings. So you get to choose how you want to pick up that data. You get to choose what systems you're tying together overall. And then our integration process is where you get into the actual details of it. So I've got a large amount of integrations in this particular one. So I'm going to go and find my specific one. There we go. We've got our Work 365 invoices to Business Central real time. I'm going to open this up to modify it so you can kind of see how everything hangs together inside the process. So as that opens up, what we're going to see on here is we'll see our different connection points for where we want to pull the data from. Data source is going to be set as that real-time trigger that we defined on the other screen. We're going to be sending it to Business Central for our target. And then as we dive into the Business Central target, we'll get to look at the individual service and the fields underneath it so you can see how we've mapped each piece through. Additionally, we have an integration running back that other direction as it completes. So you'll see how we've chained multiple integrations into one ongoing process for this. So as I mentioned, our data source, we're pulling this as a real-time event from our customer engagement environment. I've set it up on that invoice. I'm grouping on the invoice name, might not technically be correct. I might want to use more of like an ID field to identify my records rather than the name. But for this particular demo, it works as I'm only doing a handful of records at a time. For my target, we're going to Business Central. I'm just using that demo database, that Kronos US company inside of there. And what we get to see when we go to Business Central for our destination is any one of those page services in Business Central. And what a page service is they power any of those screens or any of the windows you access in Business Central. Every one of them is powered by a page service. And all that business logic and the fields that prevent you from entering incorrect data, that's all that business logic is contained in those services. So what you can do in Business Central is you can publish any number of those that you want, and then once they're published, we can interact with them in SmartConnect, and we get that same business logic, that same experience as if you were going through the user interface. So it's very nicely designed in that sense, in that what you get in the integration is the same thing you get if you tried to hand key in a record on there. So what I've narrowed it down to is I said, all right, for this integration, we're only doing the sales invoice. We're tying in the linked entities to make sure we get the lines as well. So we can create the invoice header and the lines from any invoice that comes from Work 365 or from Dynamics 365. Additionally, we can go ahead and split this out across different companies if we wanted to. This demo keeps it all within one company, but if you had the scenario where you have to split invoices to different companies on the fly, as long as there's some information that defines how you identify that data, you can split that out using that custom tab. We can say, all right, if it meets this criteria, it goes to company A. If it's different criteria, company B, and so on and so forth. So after our target, we actually get to the integration itself and the individual fields. So this is where I can say, all right, I want to map my header data or my particular line information. And inside of here, we get the specific fields that are available to map to in Business Central. So everything on the left, in this case, are our Business Central fields. And then what we have on the right are our fields we're pulling from the invoice in Dynamics 365. So I'm only pulling the fields I need, but you can see a lot of these I've mapped directly across. Customer name and account name, posting date, due dates are used for a lot of date fields. And then I'm taking the invoice name and putting it right in that reference field. Now, if any of the data didn't match up exactly like we needed to, what we could do is we could use one of our additional columns to go ahead and add something in on here. So what I could do is I call this a test field, but you can see we've got a number of different built-in windows to help you out. If we wanted to, we can always do a script, like I said, in SmartConnect, but a lot of these other windows will help you calculate dates, translate values from one form to another, do constant values, look up data from your destination system, etc., as you're running through it. So we give you a lot of control over that data as we're passing it through SmartConnect as part of that integration. So we've mapped the header. The lines are mapped in here as well. So if I switch over to the sales invoice lines, that's where we'll see the actual products, the quantities being mapped and the pricing, etc. So I'll make sure that pulls in correctly. So we've got our line number tied in to make sure each line is treated uniquely. We've got our product name and description, quantities, like I mentioned, to get the needed data mapped across. So as you can see from these windows, it's fully configurable. Nothing's hard coded. You don't have to do field A to field A in the other system. You can mix and match if you're using custom fields or if you have data that's not quite standard compared to the quote unquote vanilla integration. So the final pieces to this, I mentioned we've got more than one integration running. We've actually tied this together. So on the completion of this integration that brings the invoice from Dynamics 365 to Business Central, we immediately run that integration back the other direction, another one we've set up, that will go back and update the status and update that ERP transaction number to make sure we complete that loop on the full integration run. So that's where we can go ahead and change stuff out as far as you want it in terms of, all right, we kick off this process, what exactly needs to happen? We can tie each of those steps together. Additionally, we could go ahead and add a task in here. Just going to call it a test task. We could go ahead and also send off an email if we wanted to. So a common thing would be, all right, if we're running this all automated, we could look for the integration failure step So if something's gone wrong with our automated process, we could go ahead and set up an email alert to alert the correct individuals that, hey, your ongoing process failed. Whatever was wrong with it, you can include the error messages as part of that email body. They'll get the message and know that, and then they need to dive into SmartConnect or dive into Business Central or wherever the error occurred and figure out why that didn't work. So we're able to alert users to any failures that might occur on the integration process. We also log any errors that occurred so you can reprocess those later. So we kind of complete that full, integration solution package when you're looking at it. So again, I didn't want to spend the whole call into the tech details of, the SmartConnect maps and integrations that are set up, but that's the idea between any integration point that you needed to create. So we'd have an integration for our customers going one direction, CRM to Business Central. We'd likely have customers going the other direction as well to make that a bi-directional process. For invoices, we have a very specific path we're following in this demo, but again, that can be configured a bit to fit your business process, your business flows. So with that, I had just a couple more slides here I wanted to jump back in to follow up after the demo in terms of what we're currently offering. And this always goes to the wrong one, so let's swap it around there. That made me start over. So what we've done based on the work with a few different partners already, we're partnered with Work 365, so that's why I mentioned them as that CSP option between Microsoft CSP portal and Dynamics 365. We finish off that integration and tie it to your ERP. So for Work 365 specific work, we put some different bundles together with different integration points through our services team in terms of getting it set up and started. So we've got two, we didn't want to make it too complicated, so we've got a starter pack on there. We've got a couple partners that are just using the starter one. They wanted the invoices into their ERP was the end goal. So they wanted kind of the basic necessities to facilitate that. So we've got the accounts, the products, and then the invoices going across on there. We've got a few larger partners that are using something a little bit more similar to option 2, where we're also doing all the pricing work in there. They wanted vendors in as well, because later on they're going to be adding in different transaction types that are running through there. And then finally, if none of those quite fit, oftentimes they don't exactly fit on there, we can use those as a basis, and we can actually work with the service team to quote out how much work it would be if you wanted that put in internally. One partner we've worked with quite frequently on this, and both us and Work 365, is Innovia Consulting. We've got SmartConnect fully implemented in with their system internally, along with Work 365, and they've gone above and beyond what option 2 is. They're syncing in their vendors, they're also syncing across quotes as well. They've got it fully bi-directional, and we've also added in processes where they can upload data from Excel workbooks as well, using our add-in to push data across if needed. So we've fully tied their Business Central, their CRM, their Work 365, their CSP portal is all fully tied together. So any of the invoicing that they do, any of their subscriptions, automatically sync across to each one of those environments. And yeah, so we've got those different bundles and options on there. I know I've got an attendee list on the call here. We'll be able to send out a recap of this video to you as well later on, so we don't have to quickly jot all that down if you were paying attention, or if you're viewing this at a later point. For contact us, got my information on here. If you want to email me directly, that is completely fine. I love talking to different people. I realize I failed to put my phone number on there. It's the same as that you can call the basic E1 Solutions phone number at the bottom left. You can ask for me, or my extension is 708 as well if you want to go direct on there. And then we also have our sales, service, and support lines. And I know a good amount of people on the call have worked with us quite a bit, so always good to see familiar names on these presentations. But with that, kind of wraps up everything I wanted to go through. I didn't want to drag this out too long. Just wanted to make sure I got to the point on what we're offering here. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to paste them through into either the chat box or the question and answer box, and I'll answer these at the end here. Otherwise, if you're watching online, if you're not following this live, you can always send questions through to me direct at my email there, and I will respond to you as soon as I can. So thank you to everyone that is on here live. Thank you to anyone that's going to be hopping on later and viewing this at a later date. I'll sit down for a few minutes to answer questions here. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a great day. All right, I do have one question. I'm asking about the on-premise Smart Connect and what that can connect to, if it can connect to Business Central. Good question. The answer is yes, and sorry I didn't fully explain this. With our on-premise SmartConnect and SmartConnect.com, we connect to Business Central both on-prem and online from either versions of SmartConnect. It's more reliant on your other systems. Like if you have like a SQL system, normally is what I use for an example, that's on-prem and you want to connect to that frequently to pull data out or send data back into an on-prem SQL system. In that case, I'd normally recommend on-prem SmartConnect. Again, you don't have to because the opposite is true. SmartConnect.com can connect to that on-prem SQL if you want to. The requirement though is that you have to open up a SQL port to go ahead and allow us to hit your SQL server from online. There's some companies that aren't as comfortable with doing that, or they don't want to go through the process of whitelisting those IP ranges that SmartConnect sits on. So yes, sorry for the long answer there, but the answer is yes, SmartConnect on-prem can connect to Business Central online or on-prem. Same thing with connecting to Dynamics 365 on-prem or online. We've got the same connection points across both versions of SmartConnect for those products. So, good question.